Okay, Misamiko'komiaato. This is going to be my full lecture for the third lunar cycle of winter, Misamiko'komiaato, the long night's moon. This lecture is part of my Blackfoot Phenology course series. And it's going to be a bit shorter than my lectures for most of the other moons, simply owing to the time of year when this lunar cycle occurs. As its name suggests, Misamiko'komiaato, the long night's moon. Daylight hours are very short this time of year. Our world, Gitawach is frozen. And all of the animals who have either come down from the north to spend the winter here or who are sticking around and not migrating, all of them begin to focus very strongly on survival. Gamotan. Gamotan is a very important Blackfoot concept. You'll hear it a lot of times throughout Atsimoiskan, throughout somebody's prayers. Gamotan, the escape from danger. In fact, the late Misamiko'komiaato, Alan Pard, when training Mahoney and I on the beaver bundle, taught us that when you take Atsimoiskan, when you take what some might translate as prayer, or you take Atsimskas and what some might translate as making offerings or making amends, you take these ways, these very important practices that we use for reciprocating, for creating balance in the world, and if you whittle them down to their bare essence, that essence is stawapi and gamotapi. Stawapi means the way of growth. Gamotapi means the way of survival. Gamotan comes from that. And this concept permeates Blackfoot culture, traditional Blackfoot culture. Because in the past, the people had to live through these winters. You didn't ask somebody their age in Blackfoot. You don't say, "How old are you?" You say, "Tsakianis tsistoimspa. Tsakianis tsistoimspa." Meaning, how many winters have you had? Because survival through the winter is something worth claiming as a success. You'll find on some of the big offerings, the big traditional offerings, you'll see 7 black-tipped eagle feathers. Those are the 7 winter lunar cycles, the moon in a crescent around the head of the offering. And the black tips have multiple significances. They're black because, what I was told, that's where Natosi, the sun, wiped the scar off of Biloxi, Scarface, in the origin of the sweat and the okan and so much more. But they're also black tipped because those are the times when the moon is dark And you can see its transition through white displayed in the colorations of the eagle feathers. All of these significations having to do with gamotan. You know, if you're telling a story, a coup story, what some people would call a coup story, again, just like Atsimoiskan and Atsimskasin, whittles down to gamotan, gamotapi, and stawapi. Where were you lucky in receiving something that helped you grow? Where were you lucky, fortunate in your ability to escape danger? And those stories are shared as a means of passing down that knowledge of how to escape danger, the mindset, the techniques, the methods, survival. This is what's behind a lot of the Blackfoot stories. This is what's behind a lot of the Blackfoot names, including my own name, Akayukaki. So a very important concept in this time of year, Misamiko'komiaato, and into the next lunar cycle, and still, Gatoi. It's all about survival for the very few species that are up and about. And if you want to find the action in that respect, one of the places to look is for the geese. Opspiniques. The geese spend their nights along the open water crags and the rivers, mostly urban areas or adjacent to urban areas where you have warmer water flowing in from water treatment and sewage and these kind of things flowing into the river, keeping spots open. There are often other places too where you'll find spots in the river that never quite freeze over. Maybe there's a spring entering into the river right there. And these are the night roosts. These become the night roosts of the geese. If you go there just at twilight, just as it's getting very dark, you can witness an event where thousands of geese arrive at an open water crag. And they arrive in clans, they arrive in groups, families, extended families, but not too big. The whole encampment, as it were, might be like the goose's tribe. As each clan comes in, a lot of them will execute some fancy flying. It's thought to be a display. A lot of times you'll see geese coming down who'll even invert themselves and fly upside down, and there's a sound that's made when they invert themselves in the air like that and drop. Kind of a strong whistling wing sound that they do seem to be doing as a display when they come in. You know, every clan that comes in wants to impress the others. And they'll come in just at that twilight. Clan after clan after clan will come in for a landing around the open water crag. And they'll hope to be left alone for the night, but it's not usually the case. All of those who are predators who might feed off the geese know of their practice, and they meet them at the open river crags. The bald eagles, for instance. Typically, the bald eagle is a opportunist. I don't like the word scavenger. It has a negative connotation. But an eagle has to be pretty hungry to take down a goose, but it will. This time of year, it will. You'll find eagles on the rivers, on the lakes, eating geese and ducks that they themselves have killed. And inevitably, they have a good group of mobbing magpies flitting about around them. The magpies, while the eagle's plucking, the magpies will go around to the feathers and strip the little bit of flesh off the bottom of the feathers that have been plucked. The magpies don't seem to have a very good relationship with the eagles, but they certainly do with the coyotes. And in terms of a hierarchy, the eagle is more dangerous than the coyote. This coyote was waiting on the sidelines while this eagle feasted on the goose. And as you can see, as hungry as the coyote is waiting there, the coyote won't hurt the magpies because it retains its relationship with the magpies, the same relationship, the hunting relationship that we humans used to have with the magpies and the crows, that we lived synergistically. Some days they might show us where the food is, and in either case, when we make a kill, they get to eat. They clean up the carcass. So the eagle eats first, the coyote eats second. The magpies eat whatever little scraps they can get while the eagles and coyotes are going at it. And after the eagles and coyotes have left, the magpies will have their fill. You can find these places on the river. If you walk the river in the winter, it'll tell you the stories of what has recently happened, who has recently been eaten in that location. You'll see these impressions in the snow. These are the Magpie Prints. When they're not strongly defined, when the snow is just too powdery and just makes these swoops, they almost look like tadpoles. Misamiko'komiaato is the Blackfoot word for the black-billed magpies, the species that we have in Blackfoot territory. We've introduced them before, but if you want to find action out there, if you want to find the phenological happenings this time of year, they're the ones to watch. There's still a few crows around, there's still a few ravens around, but there's magpies abundant. The magpies stay, all of them stay for the winter. And they are close allies, and they will show us what's happening out there if we decide to pay attention. So in the evenings, this is the scene that we have. The geese gathering at the open river crags, and they'll sleep right along the edge of that crag on the ice. They'll form a solid black line that at night just appears to be the edge of the ice itself. But as far as appearances go, they still will have to likely move up or down river at least once or twice during the night to avoid the coyotes. During the day, the geese move up to the stubble fields, opspiniques, the white jaws, the white cheeks. It's the name for Canada geese. They move up to the stubble fields and they eat grain all day, go back to the river at night. And since they're up at the stubble fields, most of the other animals follow them. Well, several of the other animals follow them. The coyote, Of course. This time of year, the coyotes are ever on the hunt for food. Mostly they're nocturnal, but during these long nights, you'll find them in daylight hunting as well. They'll even hunt humans. I've been stalked by coyotes. You know, when the temperatures get down there and they get desperate, they're willing to take risks. BC is the Blackfoot word for coyote, and unlike some of the other North American tribes, the coyote is not considered the trickster in the Blackfoot culture or in the Blackfoot mythologies, but it does show up at times with Napi, who is the trickster. Skinny, white head, the bald eagle, also follows the geese up onto the stubble fields to hunt them there. These animals have become a symbol for so many First Nations. And there are today actually a lot of Blackfoot people who believe that the eagle is a very important bird in the culture. But my teachings, when you really go back, there's one song for the eagle that I know of. If you look at the crow's songs, there are more than 20. Just on that basis alone, the crows have given more than eagles. And then if you look at the stories, the crows and the corvids in general, including the magpies, play big, significant roles in the stories. The eagles do not. So some of what's happening with the eagle as the symbol for First Nations culture, some of that is a kind of a pan-Indian New Age type of phenomenon going on. In fact, it's not uncommon to hear people say, you know, I saw an eagle. That means I'm gonna have good luck. I don't know where that comes from, but it certainly is not anchored in traditional teachings, the Blackfoot ways at least. I've heard people tell me that they were at a funeral and there were 2 or 3 eagles circling and they thought that this meant something good. Not that it means something bad, but it means that something is dead, because the eagles, in fact, as I say, are opportunists. And they notice when something is deceased, and they're not unlike buzzards in their behavior toward that. So to see them hovering above a funeral, my quite literal translation of that would be that something is deceased. On the other hand, eagles have given things in Blackfoot traditions. The golden eagle, various ages of the golden eagle's feathers were used. I already talked about the about third-year feather, the black tips that were used in the offerings. But there were other feathers used for their dark coloration as well. They also gave things to Asokanakis, the healers. Some people had the gift from the eagle to be able to see, like the eagle sees, hey? The eagle can see down through the river, into the river, to see the fish that's underwater. And Asokanaki, who is allied with the eagle, can see into a patient's body and identify the illness and extract it. So it's not that the eagle hasn't given anything. It has, for sure. It's not that the eagle is unimportant, but I always want to take the opportunity to advocate for the recognition of corvids, crows, ravens, magpies, as traditionally the spiritual and the most spiritually recognized birds in the Blackfoot tradition, aside from maybe loons, but that's another story. Simitsiks, the waxwings, should still be around, and if you still have bullberries at your site during this lunar cycle, you'll find them cleaning up those bullberries. They're not the only ones doing so. You might also find some larger mammals, raccoons, for instance. One winter at Spopikimi, I watched a mother and daughter raccoon for a couple of months who were feeding off of the bullberries. And when temperatures got too low, they'd go into their den and they just kind of shut down. Not really a hibernation, more like a brumation, and then reemerge once the temperatures rose. Here's one of the raccoons. The name in Blackfoot for them is Sikoapspa. Sikoapspa means the black eyes. And curiously, raccoons are not represented in any of the sacred bundles that I know of. Does this mean that the species was not around Blackfoot territory until recently? It's a possibility. Though why they wouldn't be, I don't understand. You know, from my American upbringing, I was always led to believe that Rocky Mountains were almost synonymous with raccoon existence. That, you know, you'd see Davy Crockett with the raccoon hat. And of course, Davy Crockett probably wasn't in the Rocky Mountains, but it's a whole frontier, whole frontier mythology all blending together. So go up, Spix. I've never heard a raccoon song in Blackfoot. I've never encountered them in any of the traditional origin stories. I've never seen them in bundles. So this is curious. Another mammal who will eat the bullberries, who enjoys them during the earlier parts of winter, including the third lunar cycle here, Misamiko'komiaato, is Geese, the porcupine. And this time of year, I will often hunt one or two porcupines. This comes from some learning that I took from elders' interviews in the 1930s and 40s that were recorded by Claude Schaefer from the Smithsonian Institution while he was working at the Plains Indian Museum in Browning. And some of the eoch gimmicks of the time, including yellow kidney and white calf, talked about the diversity in the Blackfoot diet. A lot of people believe that you're not supposed to eat any rabbits, you're not supposed to eat any waterfowl, you're not supposed to eat anything with claws. It's only hooves, okay? But not according to the elders of the 1930s and 40s. They talked about food diversity, which included some animals with claws like the porcupine, which was considered a food that you were supposed to take in during the midwinter as part of your winter diet. And porcupine have a lot of fat, so maybe there's something to that. You know, you can see the fat layer on this animal. And they taste very good. They taste like their taste is strong, like a lamb. But yeah, usually during the winter I'll eat one or two porcupines. As you're walking around, you're going to see others. You know, the very familiar ones, Misamiko'komiaato, the black-capped chickadees. And usually the black-capped chickadees seem curious, you know, as long as it's not too freezing, and even sometimes at 20 below or worse, they'll come by and come close and inspect you. And they're one of the birds that people find very easy to train to take seeds from their hands because of their curiosity. We're going to talk more about Misamiko'komiaato in some of the lunar cycles to come. But I do want to note that if you're walking around, you're very likely to see them and their friend, Blackfoot, the downy woodpecker. You'll see them throughout the forest looking for little morsels of food, and there's all kinds of different things for them to eat out there. For instance, if you take a flashlight with you to your sights and you're walking around and you look into the deep furrows in the bark of trees and you look into the cavities, the old cavities of rotting trees and such, you're going to likely find some insects who are wintering, like these anthomiid flies, soisxisiks, who winter in deep bark furrows and cavities of cottonwoods along the river bottoms in Kitawachsinon. These are some of the kind of little animals that are being picked up as meals by the Misamiko'komiaato, the Blackfoot. You can always find other small animals, again, as we've talked about, by looking for, especially in the very cold times, looking for the frost that will gather around any openings to their dens. This is literally the breath of the animal frozen. Sikatsista, the black rabbit, is one who you can sometimes find by this method. Other animals can be found by looking for their tracks, of course. You can identify different rodents at your site and their foods. So here we have tracks of a mouse who's visiting some Russian thistle. And same species, visiting a gumweed, oxpi, and eating the seeds of the gumweed. Find places where they're taking, this is not necessarily a cache, but this is an eating spot, a place where some rodent is taking a lot of chokecherry seeds and eating through the husk and getting to the seed itself, getting to the nut. As far as vegetables out there for us, there are still some, particularly the roots. Right? Aside from eating deer and eating porcupine, and perhaps even geese this time of year, there are still vegetables available. And the onions here, bisatsinikim in Blackfoot, the fancy root, is always close to the surface. You don't need much of a tool, even just a small knife, to pry them out and get some vegetable matter in your diet. So that's something you can engage in. This is the last slide, and it is an illustration of something that always happens during this lunar cycle, which is the solstice. Stoiu mahkatoi xistiko. Stoiu mahkatoi xistiko. The winter, big, sacred day, big, powerful, holy day. Stoiu mahkatoi xistiko. And this is when the sun, to the naked eye, appears to rise in the same place for 4 mornings in a row, before it begins traveling back north, back toward us, and the days start becoming longer again. And there's a Blackfoot phrase for those days after the solstice as well. I forget how to say it, but the translation is going home days, or coming home days. In any case, this is Mahoney and I out at one of the stone cairns during the winter solstice. We're at the one that we know as Ponoka'akatsis, the Ponoka'akatsi, the elk robe, which other people know as Sundial Butte, near Picture Butte. And this particular cairn has a door that faces more southerly, and there was some conjecture at one point that southerly door opened to the winter solstice. So one winter, Mahoney and I went there to check it out, and not surprisingly, the door was opening nowhere near the sunrise on the solstice. So these alignments aren't really what these cairns are about, and we already knew that, but we had to check it out just to confirm that there's no connection. What does the solstice mean in Blackfoot history, and Blackfoot culture, and Blackfoot tradition? My strong suspicion is that this solstice event would trigger the Ganotsis in the past. Ganotsis is the long, everybody smokes ceremony, the all-night smoke, what's now called the all-night smoke. And it's a ceremony that starts when the sun goes down at night and finishes when it comes up in the morning. In the late a gekina Mike swims under told us that Gnosis is the same thing as the Okan. Okan is more aligned with the summer solstice. So that may be why Gekinam said that. I don't know. But my strong suspicion is that the Gnosis was cued by the solstice event in the past and our longest nights. And just like every other Blackfoot ceremony is triggered by some kind of phenological event. You know, the beaver bundles open when the eggs are being laid, like an Easter celebration, and they close at the end of the season when the tobacco is harvested. The thunder pipes open when the first thunder is heard. Akkogatsin camp comes together when the Saskatoon berries are ripe. So what is it that triggers Gnosis? The all-night smoke. Nowadays, people just consider it a winter ceremony and do it any time in the winter. But as I say, my strong suspicion is that this was the solstice ceremony here in Kitawaksanam. So that's it. That's all that I really have to talk about phenologically for this winter lunar cycle, Misamiko'komiaato. And the next moon, Katoi, which I will be offering a lecture for, is similarly thin in terms of content. But this remember is still a very important time of the year. It's a time to learn about survival lessons, really. And I continue to visit my site, regardless of how quiet things might seem. Again,